I'm John Laker. I'm one of the directors of Marlow Energy Group, and I'll be basically the MC for this evening. The format is that Dave will be giving us a talk, then there'll be some questions and answers, hopefully at the end of that, and then I'll give a few announcements with regard to what's going on with Marlow Energy Group over the next couple of months. But in the meantime, if I can introduce Dave Scarbrough, he's an MEG member and involved in the climate community in Windsor and Maidenhead, and he'll be talking about saving money and energy by better insulating your home. So over to you, Dave.
Thanks very much, John. Share my screen. Right, that should be okay now. So welcome everyone. Yes, and I've put our mission underneath my name and so on there. We, the climate community, focus on carbon. So within the Draughtproofing, Windsor and Maidenhead, there are lots of different eco groups. The nearest one to you is Wild Cookham. But so we've got about 8 different wild groups, something like that. And then there are plastic groups, and we are the only carbon group. So I'm going to talk about the climate a little bit, and then about insulation and draft proofing. And then, as John said, at the end, we'll do a question and answer thing. I think the first thing to say is the climate emergency is so important, and we can all make a difference. I do a few talks, and some people feel, oh, there's nothing I can do which is going to make a difference, but it does. And then if we all get together, just like you have with MEG, we can lead and implement some community actions. And I know you've been doing that, and I'll mention an important one which contributes to my talk near the end. And then we will be able to get some systemic change. So one of the things that we're doing in RBWM is working with the council and trying to get some major changes to happen. I've still got some way to go, but I hope so. So from a personal viewpoint, you and me and everyone, there's 3 big groups of carbon emissions: transport, diet, and your home, roughly equal proportions. And from a home viewpoint, there's a balance. So I gave a talk to a group which were men's matters, and most of the guys there were in their 70s or 80s. And one guy was talking to me about putting PV panels on the roof, and he said, well, I'm not going to be around that long. Will it be enough to get money, to get a return on investment? So that's one thing that will always play into people's mind. How much is it going to cost? How many years I'm going to be in this home, this house, this dwelling? And am I going to get enough money back? Or alternatively, and this is the view that I personally take, can I actually reduce my carbon emissions, because I feel that's more important than the actual cost. But as part of the talk, we'll talk a little bit about your home, then about draft proofing, and then about improving insulation. Now, my talk today, this evening, is taking bits from these 4 talks, which are already recorded and available for you to look at. So first one, how well insulated is your house? And it looks at the RBWM housing stock, so EPC rating. So I'm going to pinch a few bits from that. And there's a long one about our retrofitting expert within the climate community. A little bit more about some ways of investing to save money from Emily and from Chris. And then finally, the fourth one talks about draft busters, which is what I'm going to cover tonight, and also some simple ways to save money. And I'll cover some of those. But if you want them, they're all available for free, and that's the link. So from a RBWM viewpoint, and I stress that's the situation, what is an EPC? An Energy Performance Certificate. So it's done by a professional. They come in, they spend not long, less than an hour, going around your house, and will give you an EPC rating. So you can see on the right hand side, the current there is a D, and the belief is with doing certain things, then you can get your house up to a B. Now this was mine, or ours, should I say, my wife and I's. And you can get hold of any, so if you've not had yours done recently, you might find that there's an equivalent house in your road that you can have a look at. So not only does it say what the current situation is, it says how you can improve it. So there's various drivers, and you can read those there. I'm not going to go through them. Those are the key things which influence the EPC. What's the government regulations at the moment? So tenancies, so if you're in a flat which you are renting, then shortly the minimum EPC rating is going to be raised from E to C. Now that's really good news from a climate viewpoint, and also from whoever is renting that home. It means that landlords will have to improve the energy efficiency, which is really good news. Surprisingly, for new builds, there aren't any mandatory levels, but the vast majority are created these days at A or a B. But you'll see that there's a few which were created at a D, which is absolutely appalling in my opinion. So what's it like in Windsor and Maidenhead? And it wouldn't surprise me, it's going to be typical in Marlow and in Buckinghamshire generally. I would like to thank Friends of the Earth Reading. So I attended a talk given by one of the Reading guys, and I thought, oh, this is really useful stuff. And he was so kind, he pulled together all the data for us for the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead. So it's not my data, it's been produced by Friends of the Earth Reading for us. So what's the situation? Only 28% have got insulated walls, and the similar, less than 30% insulated roof. And I think that's absolutely staggeringly bad. The wall is a little bit more complicated, but to not have an insulated roof is, well, you're just throwing money away, in my opinion. And for those who've got cavity wall, it's easy to have something done about it. Those of you who've got solid brick, older properties, not so easy. But I'll talk about both of them. So what can we do? What can you do? What can we all do to save money and save energy? So the first thing you should always think about doing is stopping your drafts. So you do need to have ventilation. Here's a picture, and you'll know, John, that's a picture of a young Tony Cowling. So you do need to have ventilation, but you don't want uncontrolled drafts. So the key thing is to stop those drafts, and then, when appropriate, open the window to let fresh air in and fumes of various descriptions out. So there's not many of us on the call at the moment, but who feels that they have got drafts in their homes? Oh, right, Sarah definitely puts up a hand. Thank you. Right, well, the good news is it's really easy to draft proof your house yourself. Really easy. So these are just some of the products. So there's self-adhesive, and we call it foam. It's not like the cheap old foam from 20 years ago. It's quite good stuff. It's going to last many years. And if you buy it, then it's sort of listed by the profile. So you can see the top right-hand one there is a P, and the bottom right-hand one is called an E or an M profile. And those are the simplest sort, and there's lots of other sorts. There's ones with brushes or letterbox covers and so on to do the best possible draft proofing. Now in RBWM, we have a free service, which I set up a couple of years ago, called Draft Busters. And we will go into anyone's house and fix their drafts for free. Yes, we do ask for donations, but basically it's free. And as it says there, we especially want to help those people who might find it difficult to heat their homes. So what does a Draft Buster service do? So I haven't got one of those cars, but I would love to have one to do the Draft Busters. But we do have, we do call them tabards, that's right. So we're quite professional. We've got a tabard. We'll turn up and we'll say to the people, right, we'll walk around your house, and you're invited to come with us, and we'll look at all these things that are down there: doors, letterbox, windows, etc., etc. So we'll fix the drafts as long as we reasonably can, and we'll also provide advice and guidance on the list there. So all of those things, the draft proofing is really easy if you want to do it yourself, DIY. Drafts up the chimney, that's really easy to do. You just need to know that you've got them and then put up what we recommend is a small cushion in a plastic bag with something hanging down to remind you that you've got something up there so you don't light the fire or put or something like that. Gaps in the floorboards, relatively easy to do but time consuming. Radiator reflectors behind the radiators, typically you would call that foil, but there are better things. TRVs, that's thermostatic radiator valves, dead easy to fit, cost about 10 or 15 quid each, and so on. So most of those things are really easy to do. If you can persuade yourself to do them, you'll save a lot of money. Now, if any of you who are watching live or on the catch-up live in the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead, then you can contact us and we'll come, as I said, and we'll fix it. If you fancy being a draft buster within RBWM, then please contact us again. But what about if you want to set up your own service in Marlow or for Buckinghamshire? So I will be very happy. I've already done this for a few other new services. I'd be very happy to train volunteers and provide you with all the processes, equipment list, where you buy it from, and so on. And courtesy of Tony Cowling, Reading Draft Busters, there's free insurance for 2023 because he's arranged that for about 20 different draft buster services. So any new one can have it for free this year. So do contact me if you'd like to set one up. So other things that you can do to save yourself money, which are easy: bleed your radiators. So now it's cold, you've got your radiators on. If there's any cold bits at the top, they need bleeding. Has anyone got a combi boiler? No. Okay, well, if you have, there's some quite good central government advertising about this, which is good. It's a bit late, but it's good. Combi boilers, they operate at too high a temperature for the radiators. And that means that they're not as efficient as they could be. So it's quite an easy thing on most combi boilers to turn down the flow temperature. Insulate your hot water tank. Most people have got them as you buy them these days with thick insulation, which is good. What about curtains? Curtains covering your windows, and even thermally lined ones, but don't put them over the radiator so that the radiators are just heating your windows. And sausages, or snakes as some people call them, for the bottom of the doors to stop any drafts underneath if you haven't draft proofed it, or you can't for some reason. So let's have a go. What are we going to do about insulation? What options are there? Does anyone know what's the depth of the insulation in your own loft?
I do.
Yeah, what's yours, John?
300 millimeters.
300 mil, very good. Anyone else know?
Yeah, I've got a I've got about 100, 150, but I've got some multi-foil on top of that now, which is, I don't know, something like the same again.
Multi-foil at 300, at 100 millimeters. Ooh, that's interesting. I don't know about that product.
No, I've got about 100, 150 meters of rock wool.
Yeah.
And then I recently bought some multi-foil insulation to go on top of that.
So the multi-foil, is that the about 17 or 20 different layers, and it's only about a centimetre thick, that sort of stuff?
That's correct, yeah.
Right, okay, and you laid it flat?
At the moment, I've got to get up there and put the battens underneath and stretch it out.
Right, you need to be a bit careful about that. Can I suggest you check the product specification? Last time I used it, which is over 10 years ago, it was not authorized for laying flat.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that it's usually used for wall insulation, which is the other purpose I've got it for.
Yes.
But
yes.
It does help me because I've got a very short attic. So it just keeps some storage space in the attic.
Oh, for putting stuff on top, you mean?
Yeah, I'd have to put battens and then boards on top of that again. It needs about an inch to expand each side of the location. Right.
If you're wanting to put stuff in your loft as opposed to just insulation, I would recommend putting down, assuming you've got the standard stuff that you can see at the top of the screen, in between your joists, then I would recommend a very thin layer of plywood and then Celotex or something similar, like in the bottom right hand corner, and then a little bit more very thin plywood over the top. So I've got that in my eaves, my attic, my loft, so that you can put stuff on top.
Yeah, okay, well that's an interesting thought. I'll have a look at that. Either that or PIR board, I guess, but PIR board's quite thick.
Yeah. Well, I've got in mine, I've got 200 mil of Celotex, which is a bit excessive, I know, but there you go.
Yeah.
So, John, you said, was it 300 mil of loft insulation? Anyone know the current building regs?
I think it's 300, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 270, but same sort of thing. Yeah, which is about a foot, 11 inches. Yeah. And I would recommend going up to 400 mil. So it's still economic to go up to 400 mil. The Celotex is slightly excessive, but that's just a bit of me. Now, as I said, the Friends of the Earth pulled these together from the Energy Saving Trust. I would strongly recommend that website. It's really very good. And I've been on a few days ago and I've updated the figures. So all the figures in these tables I'm going to show you are from the Energy Saving Trust, and they are from October 2022. So fairly up to date, but even since then, the cost of electricity has gone up. So this is telling us how much it costs to do the various things. So the key things to look at is roughly how much is it going to be. Do you think you want to do that sort of thing? So if you've got cavity walls, then depending on the size of the house and so on, that's how much it's going to cost you. And how much might you expect to save? Again, these are all from Energy Saving Trust. And this is per year. So then you can start thinking, well, okay, so is it actually worth it? So payback time. So roof and cavity walls. You remember I said that in Windsor and Maidenhead, less than 30% of homes have got their roof insulated. Less than 30% of cavity wall homes are insulated. Now you can see the payback time, less than 2 years for roof insulation. That's going from 0, by the way, which no one, well, hopefully very, very few people will have. And cavity walls, less than 3 years. I mean, it's, assuming you've got the money, of course, it's a real no-brainer. But if you don't do your roof, you're throwing money away by the amount of heat going out. So summarising a little bit, what I think I've mentioned these. There are 1 or 2 government schemes that keep coming and going. They're not very easy to use, but there are some, particularly some, I don't know about in Buckinghamshire, but some come from central government to our local government, and then they are dished out, but they are mostly, if not totally, to people who have got a minimum, a small yearly income. If you have then a small yearly income, then do go to your council and see if you can get a grant. Yeah, so if one of you guys mentioned about doing the loft insulation yourself, so all those figures that I've shown you are for having a professional coming in. If you do it yourself, it's so much cheaper, so you'll get payback much quicker. Don't try to insulate your cavity wall though yourself. That's definitely needs an expert. So a few examples. This is our home. It's as you can see, semi dormer bungalow, and I've listed the things which are difficult, but from the EPC rating, you may remember that we started at a D and we're up to a B. And there's still more things that I'm trying to do. We've also now do not use any gas. So we have an air source heat pump. We don't cook with gas, we cook with electricity. We don't have a gas fire anymore. And the next project I'm doing is I'm waiting for a start date for a guy to come and put some more PV panels on the front. We've got a little bit on the back. Because of all the weird shapes of roofs, there's not a lot. So we're getting some on those 2. Sorry, my apologies. I forgot to turn my phone off. We're putting some on the south facing, which is the west facing is the one that you can mostly see coming towards us with the dormer. So this is Emily's house. She's put solid wall insulation on the outside of one of her elevations to make it nice and snug. And if you, we've had to do that on one small wall, but you can see this on a full elevation, and it works a real treat. So if you're thinking about it, I would strongly recommend it. It's really good. Emily did floor insulation by putting, as it says there, some little paperweight boards and then laminate over the top. For our house, we got in the Qbot. Qbot is a company which sprays underneath the floor. They have a little robot which they move around under the floor, spraying foam underneath. Unfortunately, they couldn't do the whole house, even though it was surveyed, because they found that when they came, there wasn't enough depth for the little robot to go in. And this is what Emily's done, and this is the same sort of thing that I've done as well. So Emily's put Celotex type stuff on the slopey ceilings. And in my case, there wasn't enough room in our dormer bungalow to put Celotex stuff on some of it. So I've used a product called Aerogel, which is quite expensive, but it's one of these new super insulators. So you have got a thermal imaging camera in Meg, and you can see the photo there. That's we got in a consultant about 2 or 3 years ago now. Went around the home, and he identified, and you can see the picture, the cold external wall once again points to a lack of cavity insulation. Well, it was cavity insulated well over 20 years ago, soon after we moved in, but it was obviously patchy. So fortunately the company was still in existence, so I contacted them and they came back and fixed it. The recorded Zooms I mentioned before, one of our climate community people is an expert, and she goes into how to do a retrofit. Basically, definitely take a fabric first approach. And then you need to think at what level do you want to do that. So passive house is excellent, and Enefit is pretty close. But if you're going to get a full retrofit, then definitely recommend a retrofit coordinator. DIY, yeah, I'm reasonably good at DIY, so I do some things myself, but you do need to be careful about mold and damp. Builders, everyone tells you to get 3 quotes. Good luck to you. It's really hard getting people to quote. But I would recommend starting off with, we have a green book called the Maidenhead Green Book, and there's certainly a website called the Green Book, and I presume you've got something similar in Marlow. Also, which have a trusted trader thing. So I've used 2 companies from that very happily, and I'd certainly say that that's good. So another thing that we are doing, so the climate community are doing with other eco-action groups within the Royal Borough of Windsor Maidenhead, is we are just about to open the Eco-Action Hub. So it'll mean that anyone can come in, ask questions, get advice. We're hosting events and activities, and it's all starting off in the old Dorothy Perkins shop. It's quite a big shop, as you can see looking in there. So last Saturday we had a soft opening where we had our repair cafe and also a seed swap. So the thing that you can see there is the seed swap. The repair cafe is upstairs. So yeah, it's important, please, for you to insulate your homes and draft proof them, and do everything else that you can to save our planet. Well, the planet will keep going. It's a civilization that may not. So yeah, as I was saying at the start, recommend that you really do anything that you can do will make a difference. And I recommend, please do anything that you can. Get together. So you've got Meg, you're doing Meg, which is great. So that's like acting as a community and getting more things done and stimulating things like having the thermal imaging camera. Absolutely brilliant. And the way that I lobby central government is I join the pressure groups, and I donate to them for them to do all their bits and pieces. The nearest organisation that we've got is Cookham's Footprint to you. So Cookham's Footprint was set up about a year ago, and they are there to save carbon, and they've got a draft proofing group which are all part of our climate community draughtproofing group. So they come under our remits to get our insurance and all that sort of stuff. But they do Cookham's residents. So again, if you fancy setting up your own Draughtbusters organisation service, then I'm very happy to help. Any questions?
Dave, it's not really a question, but just a bit of information for you and for everybody else. There's an organisation called Warm in Wickham, which I hadn't heard of until today. And they've just sent me some stuff with regard to what I call dogs or things like that to go, you know, under doors.
Yeah, yeah. Or sausages or whatever, yeah.
Sausages. But yeah, they're in existence. I've yet to find anything out more about them, but at least there's something positive going on in Wickham.
Yes, we. Shall I stop sharing now, and then we can see each other?
Yes, please. Yep, top.
How's that? Yes, we had two of them who are setting that up come over to our Eco Action Hub. Excuse me. Asking a few questions about what we're doing and all this sort of stuff. So yes, I'm aware of them. Yes, we are helping them. Yeah, they set themselves up some time ago, but they've sort of morphed from a material swap shop type thing into more of a wanting to set up a climate hub.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Yes, Sarah.
Yes, we have had a thermal survey recently from a Which Trusted Trader, retrofit coordinator, and they seem very reluctant to suggest that we contact our ICW fitter and top up our cavity walls, which have shrunk. It was the old formaldehyde, which I would call polyurethane foam, that was sprayed into the walls 40 years ago, and of course it has shrunk away from the corners. So I was very interested to see that that's exactly what had happened with yours. So is there received wisdom now that topping up ICW is no good? They suggested we had at great cost external wall insulation fitted.
Yes, I had heard, Sarah, that there are problems with topping up the foam that's been sprayed in. Yeah, mine wasn't. Mine was the fibre that had been put in. I would certainly say that you will see a significant difference if you do put the external wall insulation in. But yes, I do understand, yes, it is more expensive, yeah. I can't comment about whether you can top up the sort of foamy type stuff. I'm sorry, yeah.
No, and another very quick one. Are knit curtains in any way valuable for stopping heat loss out of windows?
I wouldn't have thought so particularly, but you could use them to stuff a sausage dog for the bottom of an external door.
Yeah.
Incidentally, we had my wife and I went to a teenagers group and showed them how to make sausage dogs, which they all enjoyed. So the Draughtbusters service, I think we've got about 3 left, I think now, 3 sausages left. So if anyone needs a sausage, we can donate one. Yeah.
Any more questions? Incidentally, whoever's eaten their tea, can they mute?
Oh, sorry, it's me. I'll mute.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Tom.
Right. I think one interesting little snippet, if you don't mind, John.
Yeah.
So the Draughtbuster service that I set up some time ago was really because of you, John, and MEG. So I attended one of your talks with Tony Cowling talking, and also with Instagroup. And I thought, oh, that's a great idea, Draft Busters. So I contacted Tony separately. It might have been through you, I can't remember now. And then Tony helped us set up our draft busting service in Maidenhead, including training us and giving us some products and helping and so on. And I've done the same before to since then to a group in Egham, and also another one further out, and I've forgotten where exactly. So if any of you are interested, or you can find, or you want to push out a note, John, on the Meg group, if anyone interested in setting up a Draft Busters group, then I'm certainly very willing to help.
What we'll do is in our next newsletter is advertise this as being on the website,
Yeah,
and ask if anybody wants to set up a similar group.
yeah, yeah, good.
Any more questions? You can think of questions if you like while I go through a few quick announcements, if that's all right. Let me just start off with hitting that up there. We're still looking for volunteers, and we're still looking for members. Membership for MEG is £10. It's a one-off amount, so you only have to pay it once, and you get invited to these talks. You get a newsletter, and you get all the facilities like access to the thermal camera. So yeah, there's a lot available to you. Right, as far as talks this year are concerned, we're looking at 2 in the relatively near future. A new one on PV panels, probably from a firm called Solability, who are local. And we're also looking at having a talk from a gentleman who is giving us a talk on air tightness testing.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
That should be quite a good one. In addition to talks, we also hope to hold what we're calling initially a smart energy fair in Marlow, probably fairly central, where hopefully 10 dozen, maybe even more commercial organisations will offer their wares, whether they be cavity wall insulation, roof insulation, air source heat pumps, PV panels, you name it, so that consequently members of the public in Marlow can go in and talk to these people and have explained to them what all these technologies do and how much they actually cost. Just a quick update on the thermal camera project. We have now closed it for this year because it's getting too warm, despite the snow tomorrow. But anyway, we have closed it this year till December this year, when we'll start again. And the good news is we managed to do 77 houses during this period of time. So hopefully 77 people or families have been advised with regard to what they can do to improve their houses' energy efficiency. Right, any more questions before we perhaps thank Dave? Anything from George or Anne or Andy?
John, I'd just like to check with Dave. I think he mentioned something, because I've got the same problem of insulating sloping roofs in the house, and there are a lot of houses around Marlow Bottom which is similar. So he mentioned something, I think it was called auto gel, as a means of doing that. So I'd like to investigate that further. It's
aerogel.
Aerogel?
Yeah, AEROGEL. So it's only manufactured by one organisation, as far as I can tell. And you either buy it as a blanket and it's rolled up, or you can buy it with thin plasterboard attached.
Okay.
Beware, it does say this on the instructions. If you buy the blanket, it is very dusty. Make sure you wear a decent mask.
Okay. Okay, I'll have a look at it anyway.
But yes, it's a super insulator. So you buy, it's literally only I think it's 5mm or 10mm, something like that, I think. So it's really very thin.
Yeah, that's interesting because my problem was these houses built some time ago, so I've only got 100mm between the plasterboard and the felt on the outside. So I've either got to take the roof off or build inside. So it's a challenge.
Exactly the same with our dormer bungalow. Yeah. So
okay,
where we could, we put in as much thickness as possible of Celotex, and then when you couldn't do that because it overhung the door frame, so to speak, then used aerogel.
Okay, I'll have a look at it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask one quick question, which has just flummoxed me lately, Dave, and that is, in people's roofs, basically they've got what I call the rafters, which are horizontal. Is that right? Or are the rafters the one that goes at an angle?
Oh, I don't know what you mean, but the joists normally you'd say are laid on top horizontally.
So joists are flat and the rafters are the ones that are an angle.
Right, let's do that. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Now, I've seen many adverts on YouTube, not YouTube, on Facebook, which advertise filling in the gaps of the rafters in the loft. Now, if your joists are insulated, why on earth would you insulate the rafters?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, John. I think it's a scam.
Oh, I'm right.
We went.
I did hear something about that on a radio program, and it is not only is it a scam, but apparently at the moment, if you wanted to remortgage your house, equity release or something like that, apparently nobody will lend you money if you've had your loft sprayed with insulation, because they can't see whether the wood was rotting, basically.
So
you've got to be very careful, and there's no benefit in having a slightly warmer attic. In fact, your attic should be ventilated anyway with natural air.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no point in doing it at all. Yeah, just insulate on top of the joists. Yeah,
I'm glad my worry about it has been justified. Anyway, can I, unless there are any more questions, can I thank everybody for coming along? That's been hugely appreciated. Hopefully we were going to get more people, but you can't have everything. And can we specifically thank Dave for coming along and giving his time. Excellent talk, loads of stuff there, and it will be available on the website for other people to see later on.